What do you know? Man, I know it's been a long time. I say it's been a long time. I think it's been about 3 or 4 months now, but it's been a while since I've done a video. So I'm going to try to get through this, try not to stretch it out too far. But I'm a little out of my routine, so I'll try not to ramble too much. Anyway, I was going back through a lot of comments and stuff. So over the last several months, since I haven't been doing any videos, I hadn't even been looking at comments. And I was reading through a lot of the comments, and one of the biggest comments that kind of keeps popping up, and I keep getting asked, I decided that it would be just way easier to do a video over it. It's too lengthy of an answer to just try to put in the comments. Plus it's a lot of information. So the question that I keep getting asked is, Landstar a good fit? Would I prefer Landstar over Schneider? You know, did I regret leaving Schneider to go to Landstar? You know, so questions all along those lines about Landstar. And the answer to the question is pretty broad. So is Landstar a good fit? Well, Landstar is a good fit for a lot of people, but it's also not a good fit for a lot of people also. So the only way to answer this is to just kind of break it down, kind of give you my opinion on some things, and then you make a decision on what's a good fit for you. Now keep in mind, whenever I when I left Prime and I was looking to do something different, now granted I'm still leasing a truck, you know, I was looking at doing dry van, because at the time, you know, I was out there pulling a flatbed and dry van, and post-pandemic, people pulling dry van was making more money than us flatbedders. So I was like, hey, never done it, I'll try it, you know. I mean, it can't be hard, you know, guys are just swinging doors and stuff, you know, and they're making better money. So you got to keep in mind, I only looked at 4 companies whenever I decided to do this. I looked at Landstar, Mercer, Schneider, and JB Hunt. There are other companies out there. There's Super Ego, USA, Great White, etc. You know, but when I was looking, my biggest thing is I had to have a load board. I had to be able to see what freight was available. I personally, myself, I don't do so well when somebody says, this is the best that we have for you. If I can't physically see that that is the best, it doesn't set well with me. So if I'm in a bad area and I can see that, hey, this is the best load, then I don't have an issue with that. I can physically see it with my own 2 eyes. I'm not very good at trusting people that I don't know and believing that this is the best we got. So for me, a load board was a must. Now for some people, that's not a must. Some people do just fine with being dispatched, and there's a lot of companies out there that have good freight, and they have not necessarily forced dispatch. You know, you can turn loads down, but they have somebody that dispatches you. They have, you know, they send you over a load, you decide whether or not you want to take it or not. So there's companies that do that also. And if that works for you, then great. But for me, I had to have a load board. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about some of the pros. So let's just hit on Landstar first here. So the obvious pros was fuel discounts, tire discounts, you know, huge freight network. They have dedicated freight, they have specialized freight, and the load board. Now, when I mention the load board, At Landstar, the load board is not your end-all be-all. The load board is a tool. The key to Landstar is building relationships and learning where freight is at that you like to haul. There's so many different options, but the load board is just a tool. It's a tool to help you when you're in a dead spot. Or if you get to an area and an agent that normally you would deal with doesn't have something at the time, you know, you can hop on the load board. I just had that this last week. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute, but let's just keep it moving. So anyway, that was the pros. That's some of the bigger pros for Landstar. The cons, you got to have a hazmat. For some people, they don't want to get a hazmat. They don't want to deal with hazmat. Once you're at Landstar, you don't have to deal with hazmat, but you do have to have your hazmat endorsement. Their hiring process, that's another con. I think it took me like 3 weeks to get hired on, where other companies like JB Hunt, even Schneider, I think Schneider had me hired on within the week. JB Hunt, they told me they could have me hauling freight by the end of the week. You know, there's a lot of companies. Mercer was the same way. They told me they could have me up and running within about a week. So there's a lot of companies that their hiring process is nowhere near as lengthy as Landstar's. So if that bothers you, then maybe Landstar is not a good fit. Another con, I mentioned this as a pro, but well, kind of, sort of. So a con and a pro is you got to deal with agents. You got to network. You got to build relationships. So that is, in some people's opinion, a con to Landstar. You can't, like I said, you can't just rely on that load board, because what you'll find is a lot of times the load board, you'll see 12 of the same loads and they're all posted by a different agent. And then whenever it comes down to it, after you call all 12 agents, none of them had the load. You know, it was a load that they had pulled off a different load board and just posted it to Landstar's load board. That's a whole nother subject. We're not going to really beat on that too much, but that happens a lot over here. And that's, like I said, you can't rely on the load board all the time. But for some people, that whole networking and building relationships, that is something that works for them. For me, that works. I came from a manager and a sales background, did that for many, many years. So for me, networking with people works very well for me. I do very well with calling people, you know, asking questions, getting to know people. And I feel like I've always been a very likable person, so that helps me in the long run. So, you know, having to network and having to build relationships is not a con to me, but for somebody else that's not good at making cold calls and, you know, and talking to people, that might be a con. You know, a point and click load board might be something that fits them better. For me, I tried that. If y'all have followed me for any length of time, I was at Schneider before I came to Landstar. They had a point and click load board. I didn't have an issue with that. I'll get to my issue with that whenever I get to them. But anyway, so another con that I have on here, and I kind of touched on this a little bit for Landstar, is there's a lot of third-party agents all posting the same load. You know, you can look at the load board and, you know, open it up and it may show 50,000 loads on there. But if you open a load, say you look at within 150 miles of you, there may be 20 loads that are all posted. It's the same load, all posted by different agents. So sometimes I think that number is a little skewed a little bit because it's not accurate. You know, just because an agent puts a load on the board doesn't mean it's a good load, which is a con in my opinion. I feel like if it's on a load board, it should be a good load. But unfortunately, that's not always the case over here. So Let's see and make sure I didn't miss out on anything here. I think I hit everything on the Landstar side. Let's talk about Landstar versus Mercer here. We'll talk about Mercer a little bit. Now, I've never worked for Mercer. Never been underneath their umbrella, never ran their numbers or anything. But I do know people over there. I did talk to Mercer quite a bit, pretty heavily, back earlier whenever I was trying to make a decision on where to go. And Mercer has some very similar characteristics to Landstar. With Landstar, you're kind of on your own, though. When I say you got to build relationships and this and that, you're on your own to find your own freight. You're on your own to kind of schedule things out, you know. At Mercer, you do have a coordinator. You have a coordinator that looks for freight for you also. So if something pops up while you're running down the road, they can give you a call and say, hey, this load has popped up. Would you be interested in it? At Landstar, that's not going to happen for you. Now, what will happen for you at Landstar is you will have agents that call you, and they'll see that you're coming into an area, and they'll call you. Now, some of them have got trash freight. Don't get me wrong. 9 times out of 10, it's a trash load. It's somebody trying to move something that nobody else will take. But if it's an agent that you've dealt with prior and you've got a relationship with, then there's a really good chance that it's a good load and they're just calling you directly because they don't want to have to put it on the load board, which is another point behind Landstar. A lot of good freight don't even go on the load board. Those agents call customers or call drivers directly and they move it that way. So a lot of the good freight at Landstar, if you're on the load board, you'll never see it. So, and kind of something along that lines is kind of what I've done this weekend also, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. So the next one on my list was Schneider. Now, I did go to Schneider. I went to Schneider right out the gate because I didn't know dry van, and I felt like Schneider would be an easy fit. It would be an easy process to figure out. They have a point-and-click load board. If it's on their load board and it is a confirmed load and you're the first one to click on it, it is your load. That appealed to me in the very beginning because I didn't know the freight lanes and this and that with dry van, and I was just looking for something, you know, that was the easiest process for me. Plus, leasing an SFI truck and going to Schneider is easier and cheaper than going anywhere else. There's incentives to lease your truck to Schneider, obviously. So, now, some of the downfalls that I had with Schneider. Their fuel discounts, in my opinion, suck. They're trash. They're some of the worst discounts, in my opinion, for a mega carrier. With Schneider, I've seen other YouTubers, they don't even use the Schneider fuel card. They get their own fuel card and they use say the Mud Flap app. And that's how they get their biggest savings. Because Schneider's fuel discount is just, there was times that it was like 25 cents off per gallon across the board, and it's only at Pilot Flying J's. It might have changed a little bit since then, but I don't think it has. The other downfall that I had with Schneider was they'll tell you, if you call, their recruiters will tell you that they got freight all over the nation. Everywhere in the lower 48. You can go anywhere you want to. What they won't tell you is there's pretty much a hard line at I-35 and freight don't cross that line. Now, I think they have a different load board for their team trucks, and you know, their team trucks cross that line all the time, but solo freight does not. In the 9 months that I was there, I saw 3 loads that crossed I-35. I have another buddy that left there not too long ago. I don't remember how many months he was there. He never saw a load that crossed I-35. He tried numerous times to get over. So what essentially happens is loads on the east of I-35 stay east of I-35, and everything in the Western 11 stays in Western 11. Now, not saying that there's none. I did see a load out of Memphis one time that went to like Phoenix. It didn't pay good, but it did cross I-35. I saw a load out of Michigan one time going to Oregon. Now that load, if I remember correctly, did pay pretty good, but Oregon is kind of a dead end. So, you know, anything going to Oregon should pay good. But that was my biggest downfall with them. Now, if you're somebody that wants to just hang out on the East Coast and stay on the East Coast or stay on the West Coast, then Schneider might be a pretty good fit for you. The other, like I said, one of the positives to Schneider is they have point and click. You ain't got to call any agents. You ain't got to call anybody. If a load pops up, you just click on it, assign it to yourself, and it pops up on your tablet as in part of your workflow. Another positive thing behind Schneider that I like, that I am finding to be kind of difficult at Landstar, when you call, you get a hold of somebody. I can't tell you how many times I tried to call to resolve something with Landstar and I sat on hold forever. Literally, like, I'm trying to get something resolved right now, and I tried to call 3 different times yesterday, and I sat on hold for 20 plus minutes, and then I started getting another phone call, so then I had to hang up, and then I took that phone call, and then I would call back, and I would sit on hold for 20 plus minutes, you know, and finally I was able to get a hold of somebody, and basically I was told that it was an issue with an agent and that I needed to deal with the agent. So it was kind of a situation where I sat and did all this sitting on hold, and Landstar was like, not our problem, you got to deal with the agent. So so that is a con compared to Schneider. Schneider, if you call, you're going to get a hold of somebody, you're going to get a resolution when you make that phone call. The other company I got on here, I got JB Hunt on here, which was the other one that I looked into. Granted, like I said, I don't know a lot about JB Hunt, but I did look into them, and this is kind of my opinion. So compared to Schneider, JB Hunt has better discounts. They had better fuel discounts. They have a huge freight base. I mean, anybody that's been around for any length of time knows that JB Hunt's got one of the biggest freight bases. They got freight going everywhere. The other thing about JB Hunt is their load board is, I believe it's point and click also. I think at one point in time you did have to call like a coordinator or advisor or something like that. But now I think their load board is 100% point and click. Like if it's on the load board, you can click it, it's assigned to you, it's your load. You don't have to deal with nobody. That's pretty much the gist of those companies. I did want to touch on some other things. So all these companies have different DOT inspection levels also to keep in mind. Landstar requires you to get your tractor inspected once every 120 days. If you exceed that 120 days, they will put you out of service. Schneider, I think, was 90 days. JB Hunt, I can't remember what they was. If somebody knows, put it in the comments down below. Mercer's only twice a year. They require you to get a DOT inspection twice a year. Their one main stipulation though is once a year it has to be done by their inspector at their terminal. So once a year you got to go back to Louisville and get your inspection done if you run for Mercer. Some other key notes that I think that if you're looking at a company to go pull for, something that you need to keep in mind is terminals and shops also. If you're looking for a company where you can utilize their terminals and their shops, and that's a big point for you, then you need to find out who has terminals where you think is convenient for you. Also, if somebody has a terminal near you, that's usually a pretty good sign they've got freight in that area. I can't stress this enough. If a company has a terminal anywhere in the country, they've got freight in that area. They don't just randomly put terminals in places. There's usually a reason why they put a terminal in an area. So if a company has a terminal near you, that's a pretty good sign that they've got freight in your area, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to find freight when you leave the house, and also find freight going home. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making your decision. Also, if you want to utilize shops, now Landstar doesn't have shops. They have terminals, but they don't have shops. I myself, I don't utilize terminals. Matter of fact, I think the only time I've ever been at a Landstar terminal was whenever I had to do my orientation, and I had to go back and do a class at one point in time. That's the only time I've been at a terminal. They've got terminals here, there, and I don't know, about a half a dozen different places. I couldn't tell you where they're at because I've just never been to them. Schneider, they've got terminals everywhere. JB Hunt's got terminals everywhere. Mercer, I think, has one terminal. I'm not 100% positive, but I think they've only got the one terminal in Louisville. So that's something to keep in mind if those are things that matter to you. For me, those are not that big a deal. So as for like Schneider, I tried to utilize their shops whenever I was there. I didn't find them to be very helpful either. They're more focused on their company trucks and not their lease operators or owner operators. So I don't know if JB Hunt was any better about that. If somebody pulls for JB Hunt and they know differently, throw it in a comment. Let me know. I mean, I'd like to know myself. So I think that's about all of it. I feel like I've rambled a whole lot here and tried to just shove a whole lot of information at you as quick as I could. But do I regret my change? I don't regret my change. I am happy at Landstar. I'm doing just fine here. I'm still running the same truck, as y'all can see. I haven't changed anything. I'm not doing the dedicated account. I did have some people ask if I was still doing the dedicated. I actually canceled that contract and returned their trailer to them right at a week ago. I am back to hauling general freight. Matter of fact, I'm on a really good run for this weekend. Speaking of that, I wanted to touch on this. So part of the doing relationships at Landstar, you got to learn how to talk to these agents. You got to learn how to ask questions. I got into an area and I started calling agents that I was familiar with, and nobody had anything that I wanted. They all had freight, but nothing that I wanted. It was either going to areas that I didn't want to go to, or it just wasn't going very far. I had a lot of weekend loads that were just little one-day hops, and I was looking for something that would stretch me out from Friday all the way to Monday. I did utilize the load board and saw a load pop up. I called on it immediately. It was going from northern North Carolina all the way to North Dakota. Normally I wouldn't go to North Dakota, but here lately, that part of the country up there in the Minneapolis area, Iowa, Wisconsin, that whole area over there has been pretty hot here lately. Every time I've been up there in the last month or 2 months, like, there's been some pretty good freight. So going to North Dakota didn't scare me. So I called the agent immediately, started asking about the load. Well, something that I have a tendency to do is I will ask that agent, hey, do you have any kind of freight in that area? Do you have customers in that area? Do you know of another agent that might have something up there? Do y'all have backhauls? Those are questions that you need to learn to ask, because I simply asked, hey, do you have, if I take this load to North Dakota, do you have anything in that area, going, do you have any customers in that area? And he says, matter of fact, we got empties coming back. Would you be interested in hauling empties coming back? I said, what does it pay? He said, same money. I said, same money to go from North Carolina to North Dakota back. He said, yes, sir. I said, sign me up. I'll do that all day long. You know, you want to pay me good money, go to North Dakota, and then pay me good money, go from North Dakota back to North Carolina? All day long, sign me up. So, had I not asked those questions, I might not have known that. I might have just went to North Dakota and unloaded and been looking for something out of North Dakota then. So, that's part of what I was getting at in the whole, you got to learn to talk to these people. You got to have relationships. You know, you can't just come to Landstar and think that, you know, you're just going to point and click and get loads. It's not going to work out so well for you. So, once again, like I said, if you're on your own, 100% on your own. You're on your own in all these situations. I'll tell you that right now. When things go bad, it always falls out. It falls on us, the driver. But at least at some of these other companies, if you're trying to kind of baby step your way into this, there's other companies that make it a little easier to kind of adjust to the situation, I guess you should say. But anyway, I'm gonna throw some pictures of the load I'm on right now. I got some pictures of what it looks like inside the trailer. I'll throw them in here right now. Also, I'm going to put, I have a new SFI rep. If anybody's interested in leasing through SFI, I will put my new rep's information right down here on the bottom of the screen somewhere. You should see that. And like always, y'all, stay safe. Keep the shiny side up, rubber side down. Catch y'all on the next one.